The morning of February 12, 1985, dawned crisp and clear over the snow-draped landscape of Dallas, Texas. At Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, the hum of activity was already in full swing. Passengers hurried through terminals, their breath visible in the chilly air, while ground crews worked diligently to prepare aircraft for their journeys. Among the planes lined up on the tarmac was Delta Air Lines Flight 191, a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, its sleek silver fuselage gleaming under the pale winter sun. The aircraft, a marvel of modern aviation, was a symbol of reliability and safety, a testament to human ingenuity. But on this day, it would become the centerpiece of a tragedy that would reverberate through the annals of aviation history. Flight 191 was scheduled to depart Dallas-Fort Worth at 2:10 p.m., bound for Los Angeles International Airport, with a planned stopover in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The flight was routine, one of hundreds that crisscross the skies daily, ferrying passengers to their destinations with clockwork precision. The crew, led by Captain Edward Connors, a seasoned pilot with over 30,000 flight hours, exuded confidence. Beside him sat First Officer Rudolph Price and Flight Engineer Nick Nassick, both experienced professionals who had flown together numerous times. The trio represented the best of Delta's workforce, their expertise honed through years of training and countless hours in the air. As the passengers boarded, the atmosphere inside the cabin was one of calm anticipation. Among the 152 souls on board were business travelers, families, and vacationers, each with their own story, their own destination. A young couple returning from their honeymoon, a businessman preparing for an important meeting, a grandmother visiting her grandchildren, all united by the shared experience of air travel. The flight attendants moved gracefully through the cabin, their smiles warm and reassuring, as they ensured everyone was settled and comfortable. Outside, the ground, crew completed their final checks, their movements precise and methodical. The aircraft was fueled, the cargo loaded, and the weather, though variable, appeared manageable. The weather, however, would prove to be the wild card in this otherwise routine flight. As Flight 191 taxied to the runway, the skies over Dallas were a patchwork of light and shadow. To the west, a line of thunderstorms was brewing, their towering cumulonimbus clouds casting long shadows over the landscape. These storms, common in the region during the summer months, were known for their ferocity, capable of producing severe turbulence, hail, and even tornadoes. The National Weather Service had issued advisories warning of the potential for severe weather, but for the crew of Flight 191, the conditions were nothing they hadn't encountered before. They had been trained to navigate such challenges, their confidence bolstered by years of experience. At 2:10 p.m., right on schedule, Flight 191 roared down the runway, its engines thundering as it lifted gracefully into the sky. The ascent was smooth, the aircraft climbing steadily through the layers of atmosphere. Inside the cabin, the passengers settled in, some reading, others chatting quietly, while a few gazed out the windows at the receding landscape below. The flight attendants began their preparations for the in-flight service, their movements efficient and unhurried. For now, all was as it should be, a routine flight, a routine day. But as the aircraft approached its cruising altitude, the first signs of trouble began to emerge. The line of thunderstorms to the west was closer than anticipated, their dark, anvil-shaped clouds looming ominously on the horizon. The crew, monitoring the weather radar, noted the intensity of the storms but remained confident in their ability to navigate around them. They adjusted their course slightly, aiming to skirt the edge of the weather system, a common practice in such situations. The decision seemed sound, a calculated maneuver to ensure the safety and comfort of everyone on board. As Flight 191 drew closer to the storm system, however, the conditions began to deteriorate rapidly. The once clear skies were now a swirling mass of gray and black, the clouds churning with an almost malevolent energy. the aircraft began to encounter turbulence, at first mild but growing in intensity with each passing minute. The passengers, though uneasy, remained calm, trusting in the skill of the crew to see them through. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, their voices steady as they reassured those who were nervous. Outside, the rain began to fall, heavy drops pelting the windows as the wind buffeted the aircraft. Inside the cockpit, the mood was one of focused concentration. Captain Connors and his crew were acutely aware of the challenges they faced. The weather radar painted a vivid picture of the storm's intensity, the red and yellow blobs indicating areas of severe turbulence and potential wind shear. Wind shear, a sudden change in wind speed or direction, was a known hazard in thunderstorms, capable of causing rapid and unpredictable changes in an aircraft's altitude and airspeed. The crew had been trained to recognize and respond to such conditions, but the reality of encountering them was far more daunting than any simulation. As Flight 191 entered the outer fringes of the storm, the turbulence became almost unbearable. The aircraft was tossed about like a leaf in a gale, its massive frame shuddering under the strain. The passengers, now visibly anxious, gripped their armrests, their knuckles white. The flight attendants, though trained to remain calm, struggled to maintain their balance as they moved through the cabin. In the cockpit, the crew worked tirelessly to keep the aircraft stable, their hands moving swiftly over the controls as they adjusted the throttle, the rudder, the ailerons. The storm was relentless, its fury unabated, and the crew knew they were in a battle for survival. Then, at 4:05 p.m., disaster struck. As Flight 191 descended through 1,000 feet on its approach to Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, it encountered a microburst, a particularly violent form of wind shear. The microburst, a column of rapidly descending air, slammed into the aircraft with the force of a freight train. The sudden downdraft caused the plane to lose altitude rapidly, the altimeter spinning wildly as the crew fought to regain control. The engines, though powerful, were no match for the sheer force of the microburst, and the aircraft began to descend at an alarming rate. In the final moments, the crew's training and experience were pushed to their limits. Captain Connors, his voice calm but urgent, called out instructions as he struggled to pull the aircraft out of its descent. First Officer Price and Flight Engineer Nassick worked in tandem, their movements precise and deliberate. But it was too late. The ground, once distant, was now rushing up to meet them. The passengers, many of whom had realized the gravity of the situation, braced themselves for impact. The flight attendants, their voices steady, called out instructions, their words a lifeline in the chaos. At 4:08 p.m., Delta Airlines Flight 191 crashed into a field just north of the airport. The impact was catastrophic, the force of the crash tearing the aircraft apart. Debris was scattered over a wide area, the once mighty Lockheed L-1011 reduced to a twisted mass of metal and wreckage. The scene was one of utter devastation, a stark contrast to the calm and order that had characterized the flight just moments before. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, their sirens wailing, but for many on board, it was already too late. The crash of Delta Airlines Flight 191 would go down in history as one of the deadliest aviation disasters in the United States. In the days and weeks that followed, investigators would pore over the wreckage, searching for answers. What had gone wrong? How had a routine flight ended in such tragedy? The answers, when they came, would reveal a complex interplay of factors, from the unpredictable nature of the weather to the limitations of technology and human judgment. But for the families of the 137 passengers and crew who lost their lives that day, the questions would linger, a painful reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving power of nature. The field north of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, once a quiet expanse of grass and earth, was now a grim tableau of destruction. The wreckage of Delta Airlines Flight 191 lay scattered across the landscape, a chaotic mosaic of twisted metal, shattered glass, and personal belongings. The once proud Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, a symbol of human engineering and ambition, had been reduced to a haunting relic of tragedy. Emergency responders moved through the scene with a sense of urgency, their faces etched with determination and sorrow. Flashing lights from fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars cast an eerie glow over the wreckage, while the distant hum of helicopters overhead added to the surreal atmosphere. The first responders, trained to handle such disasters, were nonetheless unprepared for the scale of the devastation. Bodies lay amidst the debris, some still strapped into their seats, others flung far from the main impact site. The air was thick with the acrid smell of jet fuel and burning metal, a pungent reminder of the violence of the crash. Firefighters worked tirelessly to extinguish the flames that had erupted upon impact, their efforts hampered by the sheer magnitude of the disaster. Paramedics moved among the wreckage, searching for survivors, though the chances of finding anyone alive grew slimmer with each passing minute. As news of the crash spread, the airport became a hive of activity. Families and friends of those on board Flight 191 began to arrive, their faces pale with shock and fear. They were ushered into a makeshift crisis center where Delta Airlines representatives and counselors waited to offer support. The atmosphere was heavy with grief and uncertainty, as loved ones clung to the hope that their family members might be among the survivors. But as the hours passed and the reality of the situation set in, that hope began to fade. The once bustling terminal, a place of departure and arrival, had become a somber gathering place for those left behind. In the days that followed, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, launched a full-scale investigation into the crash. The NTSB, tasked with determining the cause of aviation accidents, assembled a team of experts in aeronautics, meteorology, and human factors. Their mission was clear: to piece together the events that had led to the disaster and to identify any factors that could have contributed to the crash. The investigation would be exhaustive, involving the analysis of flight data, cockpit voice recordings, weather patterns, and the wreckage itself. The wreckage, painstakingly collected and cataloged, was transported to a secure facility for closer examination. Every piece of debris, no matter how small, was scrutinized for clues. The aircraft's black boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, were recovered and analyzed, providing critical insights into the final moments of Flight 191. The recordings revealed a cockpit crew that had been calm and professional, even as they faced the terrifying reality of the storm. Their voices, though strained, betrayed no panic, only a determined focus on saving the aircraft and its passengers. The weather, it soon became clear, had played a central role in the crash. The thunderstorms that had engulfed Flight 191 were no ordinary storms. They were a complex and volatile system, capable of producing severe wind shear and microbursts. A microburst, a localized column of sinking air that spreads out upon hitting the ground, can create sudden and drastic changes in wind speed and direction. For an aircraft on approach, a microburst can be deadly, as it can cause a rapid loss of altitude and airspeed, leaving the crew with little time to react. As the investigation progressed, attention turned to the technology and procedures in place to detect and respond to wind shear. In 1985, wind shear detection systems were still in their infancy, and many aircraft, including the Lockheed L-1011, were not equipped with advanced warning systems. Pilots relied on visual cues, weather radar, and air traffic control to navigate around storms, but these tools were not always sufficient to detect the sudden and localized nature of microbursts. The NTSB's findings would later highlight the need for improved wind shear detection and warning systems, a recommendation that would lead to significant advancements in aviation safety. The human factor, too, came under scrutiny. The crew of Flight 191, though experienced and well-trained, had been faced with an extraordinary challenge. The rapid onset of the microburst had left them with little time to react, and the limitations of their aircraft's systems had compounded the difficulty of the situation. The NTSB's investigation would ultimately conclude that the crash was the result of a combination of factors, including the severe weather, the limitations of wind shear, detection technology, and the crew's decision to continue the approach in the face of deteriorating conditions. As the investigation unfolded, the families of the victims were left to grapple with their loss. Memorial services were held, and tributes poured in from around the world. The crash of Flight 191 had touched a nerve, a stark reminder of the risks inherent in air travel and the fragility of human life. For the aviation industry, the tragedy served as a wake-up call, prompting a re-evaluation of safety protocols and a renewed commitment to preventing such disasters in the future. In the months and years that followed, the lessons learned from the crash of Delta Airlines Flight 191 would lead to significant changes in aviation safety. Improved wind shear detection systems, enhanced pilot training, and stricter weather-related flight procedures were implemented, all aimed at reducing the risk of similar accidents. The legacy of Flight 191, though born of tragedy, would be one of progress and a renewed dedication to the safety of all who take to the skies. The crash of Delta Airlines Flight 191 was not just a tragedy, it became a turning point in aviation history. In the months and years that followed, the lessons learned from that fateful day in 1985 would reshape the industry, leading to advancements in technology, training, and safety protocols that would save countless lives in the decades to come. The legacy of Flight 191 is one of resilience and progress, a testament to the enduring commitment of the aviation community to learn from its darkest moments and emerge stronger. The National Transportation Safety Board's NTSB final report, released in 1986, provided a comprehensive analysis of the crash and its causes. The investigation concluded that the primary factor was the encounter with a microburst-induced wind shear during the aircraft's approach to Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The sudden and severe downdraft had overwhelmed the crew's ability to maintain control of the aircraft, leading to the catastrophic loss of altitude and airspeed. However, the report also highlighted several contributing factors, including the limitations of wind shear detection technology at the time, the crew's decision to continue the approach despite the deteriorating weather conditions, and the lack of standardized procedures for dealing with microbursts. One of the most significant outcomes of the investigation was the push for improved wind shear detection systems. In the mid-1980s, the technology to detect and predict microbursts was still in its infancy. Pilots relied on weather radar and visual cues to navigate around storms, but these tools were often inadequate for identifying the localized and rapidly developing nature of microbursts. The crash of Flight 191 underscored the urgent need for more advanced systems that could provide real-time warnings of wind shear conditions. In response, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and the aviation industry invested heavily in the development of new technologies. One of the most notable advancements was the introduction of the Terminal Doppler Weather Radar, TDWR system. Deployed at major airports across the United States, TDWR provided detailed, real-time data on wind shear and microburst activity, giving pilots and air traffic controllers the information they needed to make safer decisions. Additionally, on board, wind shear detection systems, such as the Predictive Wind Shear (PWS) system, were integrated into commercial aircraft, providing pilots with immediate alerts and guidance on how to respond to dangerous conditions. The crash also led to significant changes in pilot training and procedures. Prior to 1985, wind shear training was not standardized, and many pilots had limited experience in dealing with microbursts. The NTSB's recommendations prompted the FAA to develop comprehensive training programs focused on recognizing and responding to wind shear. Flight simulators were updated to include realistic wind shear scenarios, allowing pilots to practice recovery techniques in a controlled environment. These training programs emphasize the importance of early recognition and decisive Action: equipping pilots with the skills needed to navigate severe weather safely. Air traffic control procedures were also revised to enhance safety during adverse weather conditions. Controllers were trained to provide more detailed and timely weather information to pilots, including updates on wind shear activity and microbursts. The FAA implemented stricter guidelines for approach and landing during thunderstorms, including increased separation between aircraft and the establishment of weather avoidance corridors to help pilots navigate around severe weather systems. These changes were designed to reduce the risk of encountering wind shear and to give pilots more options for avoiding dangerous conditions. The impact of these advancements was profound. In the years following the crash of Flight 191, the number of wind shear-related accidents declined significantly. The aviation industry's commitment to improving safety had paid off, and the lessons learned from the tragedy became a cornerstone of modern aviation practices. The legacy of Flight 191 was not just about preventing future accidents. It was about fostering a culture of continuous improvement and a shared responsibility for safety. For the families of the victims, the changes brought about by the crash provided a measure of solace. While nothing could undo the pain of their loss, they took comfort in knowing that their loved ones' deaths had not been in vain. The improvements in technology, training, and procedures meant that other families would be spared the same heartbreak. Memorials were erected to honor the victims, including a permanent monument at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, serving as a reminder of the lives lost and the lessons learned. The crash of Delta Airlines Flight 191 also had a lasting impact on public awareness of aviation safety. The tragedy brought the dangers of wind shear and microbursts into the public consciousness, prompting a greater understanding of the challenges faced by pilots and the importance of technological advancements in ensuring safe travel. Documentaries, books, and news coverage of the crash and its aftermath helped to educate the public about the complexities of aviation and the ongoing efforts to improve safety. In the decades since the crash, the aviation industry has continued to evolve, driven by a commitment to learning from past mistakes and embracing new technologies. The legacy of Flight 191 lives on in every flight that takes off and lands safely, in every pilot who undergoes rigorous training, and in every advance that makes air travel safer and more reliable. The tragedy of February 12, 1985, will never be forgotten, but its lessons have become a beacon of hope and progress, ensuring that the skies remain a place of wonder and possibility for generations to come. Behind the statistics, the investigations, and the technological advancements lies the heart of the Flight 191 tragedy, the 137 lives lost on that stormy afternoon in 1985. Each passenger and crew member had a story, a life filled with dreams, relationships, and aspirations. They were more than just names on a manifest. They were individuals whose lives were cut short, leaving behind grieving families, friends, and communities. This scene is a tribute to their memories, a glimpse into the human stories that define the true cost of the disaster. Among the passengers was 32-year-old Laura Mitchell, a schoolteacher from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Laura was returning home after visiting her parents in Dallas, where she had spent a week helping her mother recover from surgery. Known for her infectious laughter and dedication to her students, Laura had been eagerly planning a new curriculum for her third-grade class. Her colleagues described her as a beacon of positivity, someone who could light up a room with her smile. Her students, many of whom were too young to fully grasp the concept of death, struggled to understand why their beloved teacher wouldn't be returning to school. In the weeks following the crash, her classroom became a makeshift memorial, filled with drawings, letters, and flowers from heartbroken children. Also on board was 45-year-old Michael Harper, a software engineer from Los Angeles. Michael was a pioneer in his field, working on early developments in computer networking. He had been in Dallas for a conference where he had delivered a keynote speech on the future of technology. Colleagues remembered him as a visionary, someone who could see possibilities where others saw obstacles. Michael was also a devoted father of two, and his children, aged 10 and 12, struggled to come to terms with his sudden absence. His wife, Sarah, later established a scholarship in his name, aimed at supporting young innovators in the field of computer science. The flight crew, too, had their own stories. Captain Edward Connors, a veteran pilot with over 30,000 flight hours, was known for his calm demeanor and unwavering professionalism. He had been with Delta Air Lines for nearly 2 decades and was respected by his peers for his skill and dedication. Edward was also a family man, married with 3 children. His youngest daughter, Emily, had just started college, and he had been looking forward to visiting her campus later that year. In the aftermath of the crash, Emily wrote a heartfelt letter to her father, which she read at his memorial service, expressing her pride in him and her gratitude for the lessons he had taught her. First Officer Rudolph Price, 38, was a rising star in the aviation industry. Known for his meticulous attention to detail and his passion for flying, Rudolph had dreams of one day becoming a captain. He was also an avid musician, playing the guitar in a local band during his downtime. Friends and family remembered him as someone who could find joy in the simplest moments, whether it was strumming a melody or sharing a laugh with his crewmates. After his death, his bandmates dedicated a song to him, a poignant tribute to his love of music and life. Flight engineer Nick Nassick, 42, was the quiet backbone of the crew. A former mechanic, Nick had a deep understanding of aircraft systems and was known for his ability to troubleshoot problems with precision and efficiency. He was a man of few words but immense kindness, often going out of his way to help others. Nick had been planning to retire in a few years, hoping to spend more time with his wife and their grandchildren. His family later planted a tree in his memory, a symbol of his enduring love and the roots he had planted in their lives. The stories of the passengers and crew were as diverse as they were poignant. There was 28-year-old Maria Gonzalez, a nurse who had been traveling to Los Angeles to start a new job at a children's hospital. There was 60-year-old Harold Thompson, a retired Army veteran who had been visiting his brother in Dallas. There were newlyweds, business travelers, grandparents, and students, each with their own dreams and aspirations, each with a life that touched countless others. In the wake of the crash, the families of the victims came together to form a support network, united by their shared grief and their determination to honor their loved ones' memories. They organized memorial services, established scholarships, and advocated for aviation safety reforms. Their efforts ensured that the lives lost on Flight 191 would not be forgotten, and that their stories would continue to inspire and remind others of the preciousness of life. The human stories of Flight 191 serve as a powerful reminder of the true cost of aviation disasters. Behind every statistic is a person, a life, a legacy. The advancements in technology and safety that followed the crash are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring commitment to preventing such tragedies in the future. But they are also a tribute to those who lost their lives, a way of ensuring that their stories live on, not just in the hearts of their loved ones, but in the collective memory of a world that continues to strive for a safer, more compassionate future. The crash of Delta Air Lines Flight 191 was a watershed moment in aviation history, a tragedy that reverberated far beyond the immediate aftermath. Its impact was felt not only in the lives of those directly affected, but also in the broader aviation industry, where it sparked a wave of changes that would redefine the way we think about safety, technology, and human factors in air travel. This scene explores the ripple effect of Flight 191, tracing the ways in which the disaster reshaped the industry and left an indelible mark on the world of aviation. One of the most immediate and profound changes was the accelerated development and implementation of wind shear detection and warning systems. Prior to 1985, the aviation industry had been aware of the dangers posed by microbursts and wind shear, but the technology to detect and predict these phenomena was still in its infancy. The crash of Flight 191 served as a stark reminder of the urgent need for better tools to help pilots navigate severe weather. In the years that followed, significant resources were devoted to advancing this technology, leading to the creation of systems like the Terminal Doppler Weather Radar, TDWR, and the Predictive Wind Shear, PWS system. The TDWR, deployed at major airports across the United States, provided real-time data on wind shear activity, giving air traffic controllers and pilots the information they needed to make safer decisions. The PWS, integrated into commercial aircraft, offered immediate alerts and guidance on how to respond to dangerous conditions. These systems represented a major leap forward in aviation safety, significantly reducing the risk of wind shear-related accidents. The lessons learned from Flight 191 had not only improved the technology but also fostered a culture of innovation and collaboration within the industry. The crash also prompted a re-evaluation of pilot training and procedures. In the wake of the disaster, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, introduced comprehensive training programs focused on recognizing and responding to wind shear. Flight simulators were updated to include realistic wind shear scenarios, allowing pilots to practice recovery techniques in a controlled environment. These training programs emphasized the importance of early recognition and decisive action, equipping pilots with the skills needed to navigate severe weather safely. The changes were not just about improving technical proficiency. They were about fostering a mindset of vigilance and preparedness. Air traffic control procedures were also revised to enhance safety during adverse weather conditions. Controllers were trained to provide more detailed and timely weather information to pilots, including updates on wind shear activity and microbursts. The FAA implemented stricter guidelines for approach and landing during thunderstorms, including increased separation between aircraft and the establishment of weather avoidance corridors to help pilots navigate around severe weather systems. These changes were designed to reduce the risk of encountering wind shear and to give pilots more options for avoiding dangerous conditions. The impact of these advancements was profound. In the years following the crash of Flight 191, the number of wind shear-related accidents declined significantly. The aviation industry's commitment to improving safety had paid off, and the lessons learned from the tragedy became a cornerstone of modern aviation practices. The legacy of Flight 191 was not just about preventing future accidents, it was about fostering a culture of continuous improvement and a shared responsibility for safety. The crash also had a lasting impact on public awareness of aviation safety. The tragedy brought the dangers of wind shear and microbursts into the public consciousness, prompting a greater understanding of the challenges faced by pilots and the importance of technological advancements in ensuring safe travel. Documentaries, books, and news coverage of the crash and its aftermath helped to educate the public about the complexities of aviation and the ongoing efforts to improve safety. In the decades since the crash, the aviation industry has continued to evolve, driven by a commitment to learning from past mistakes and embracing new technologies. The legacy of Flight 191 lives on in every flight that takes off and lands safely, in every pilot who undergoes rigorous training, and in every advance that makes air travel safer and more reliable. The tragedy of February 12, 1985, will never be forgotten, but its lessons have become a beacon of hope and progress, ensuring that the skies remain a place of wonder and possibility for generations to come. The ripple effect of Flight 191 extended beyond technology and training. It also influenced the way the industry approached human factors and crew resource management. The crash highlighted the importance of effective communication and decision-making in the cockpit, leading to the development of programs aimed at improving teamwork and situational awareness among flight crews. These programs, which emphasize the value of collaboration and mutual support, have since become standard practice in the industry, contributing to a safer and more efficient aviation environment. The legacy of Flight 191 is a testament to the resilience, and determination of the aviation community. It is a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, there is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to make the world a safer place. The lives lost on that stormy afternoon in 1985 were not in vain. Their stories continue to inspire and guide us, ensuring that their memory lives on in the skies above.